Let's talk about interpreting graphs. Remember that the type of data you're dealing with is going to determine what kind of graph you can use. If you're looking at numerical data, you can use a dot plot, a histogram, or a stem plot to illustrate the distribution of your data. For categorical data, we're going to use a pie chart or a bar graph to illustrate the distribution. When we talk about measurements of the data, in numerical data, you're looking at center, spread, and variation. On the other hand, when you're looking at categorical data, we're going to talk about the mode and variability in the data. Notice there are other types of graphs available, but these are the ones that we're going to focus on. If your data is perhaps separated by gender or other categories, maybe level of education or hometown, for example, you can display side-by-side graphs to help illustrate the differences in the distributions according to those categories. So here we've got, these are side-by-side box plots, which we'll talk about in the next chapter on your top left of the screen. And on the bottom right, we've got some side-by-side bar charts. Be careful of misleading graphs. One thing you should always look out for is if they've changed the scale of the y-axis when you're looking at a bar graph. So here on the right, our scale goes from 0 to 1.4, while on the left, the scale starts at 1.2 and goes up to 1.4. Notice on the left, it makes the decrease in violent crimes look much more extreme than it does on the right. You should also be careful about using icons of different sizes rather than bars of equal width. On the left, this makes the category A look like it's much larger than, say, category C as compared to the equal width bars on the right. Let's look at a couple of examples. This graph below shows the education of residents of Nyland Acres and Oxnard, both of which are towns in Ventura County in California. Which community tends to have more highly educated residents? Well, let's look at this bar graph. The highly educated residents are going to be residents that have, say, college degrees or higher. So we want to look at these categories to the right. And if you look at the bars here, the green has higher bars in these categories. So that would suggest that Oxnard has more highly educated residents. So let's write that here. And I'm writing with the mouse, so it's a little messy here. I'll leave the explanation for you. What about which community tends to have the least variation in education? Now remember, variation means we're looking at variability in the categories. If we look at Oxnard again, Oxnard has residents that live or that are categorized in each of these categories. So there's a higher degree of variability in Oxnard as compared to Nyland Acres. So for part B, our answer is Nyland Acres. All right, let's look at another example. The 2012 General Social Survey asked its respondents to report their political party affiliation. This graph shows the results for 879 men. Here we've got both the bar chart and a pie chart of the responses. So we can use either chart to answer our questions. The first question is, which political affiliation has the most men? Now, if we look at the bar chart, to have the most, you're going to be the highest bar. And so that's going to be the Democrat, not strong. Now, could you also determine that by looking at the pie chart? Sure. You're going to look for the pie piece, that's the largest. Here, that's the green, and if we look at our key, that's the Dem, not strong. Which political affiliation had the second highest number of men? So now I'm looking for the category that has the second highest number. If I'm looking at the bar chart, that's going to be this bar here, other. If I'm looking at the pie chart, that's a little bit harder to determine because these four pies are relatively close in area. But if you look closely, the other pie is bigger. So we're going to say other. And I think it's easier to determine that using the bar chart because, again, it's a little harder to determine the areas of these pie slices when they start to get close. Let's try another question. Which of the following is a graph that can be used to display categorical data? I'll give you a second to think about it on your own. All right, so a histogram and a dot plot we talked about, these are used for numerical data. The bar graph is used for categorical data. Which of the following are used to describe categorical data? Our options are the shape, the mode, the center, or all of these. Well, remember with categorical data, it doesn't make sense to talk about the center or the shape. So the answer here is the mode.